Quick demonstration on how to use TKinter. We are in the code HS environment. We go to Sandbox. We create a new sandbox. You can call it maybe create performance task version 1. Now important is when you click create program that you don't click Python 3 but Python 3 graphics TKinter right there, and then you create a program. It's going to take a couple of seconds. It's going to pop out this, and then you already have a small program here. You can run it if you want to see what is possible. And this is a simple typing program where you have to type the word that is provided, and if you type it properly then it goes to the next word. It uses this list here to choose from, and then that's what it shows on the screen, and then that's what you have to type. We're going to build something from scratch. This is really interesting to see, but there's a couple of things happening here that are quite advanced already. So I just want to remove everything and start from scratch. Yeah, so if you run this, nothing happens because there's no code. The first thing you want to do is import TKinter. So we're going to say from TKinter import star. This will import the module TKinter. In fact, it will import every variable and every function that is inside TKinter, which is great, which is now something that we have available. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to structure our program. We're going to reserve some space for functions that we're going to need. So we're going to say functions. Those are going to appear here. And then here I'm going to say main code. And at the bottom, I'm going to say run the GUI, graphical user interface. In main code, we are going to create a new window. And the way we do that is we create a variable. I'm going to call it window. And I'm going to say window is TK, capital T, lowercase k, with parentheses. That's all. That will create a window, but we have to run the graphical user interface at the bottom to make something appear, because if we run this code, nothing will appear, nothing will happen. So we want to say at the bottom of our code, window.main loop. Aww. So you see, this is the variable that we created before, where this is a TKinter environment pretty much that we created from scratch, and we're now just running it. So if we click run now, we should get like a gray box. Oh, I forgot one thing. There are supposed to be parentheses here. It's a method. Main loop is a method. So we need some parentheses here. If we run this, we should get a gray box. There it is. And this is our basis for the rest of our little application that we're creating. I'm going to give my window a title. It's not going to appear anywhere, but maybe later if we export this to some kind of external environment, then that might show up. I'm going to say window.title my project. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is put a text at the top. I'm going to create a little app called a doubler. So what it will do is just accept input, one line of input, that should be a number, and that number will be doubled, and we output double the value of whatever was put in. So I'm going to create another comment saying, so I'm going to say show instructions. And I'm going to create a label for that. So a label is something that will appear as text in my application. And I'm going to say instr is label. Now I have to reference the window that we're using. So I'm going to say window, and I have to provide some more parameters where first I have to say what's the text I want to show. So text is, let's start with a small introduction. So I'm going to say number doubler. I'm going to set the width. I'm going to set that to maybe 30 characters. And the background is yellow. Now we have to position our label. So for that we say inster.grid, because everything that you put inside your application is put on a grid. So I'm going to say row is 1, column is 0, and then I'm going to say sticky is capital W. I'm not sure what this does, but I've seen this in many tutorials, and this is added at the end, so I can look up for you what it means, but for now I'm just going to add it, knowing that it will make happen what I want it to make happen. So I'm going to run this, and it should show our gray box, and then some text saying number doubler, and there you go. And then the next thing to do, I would just copy this and paste this, where I would say now, so this would be my title. I'm going to call it TTL, and then here TTL.grid, because the instructions will come now, where I say provide a number. And of course I have to change the positioning, where now the row should be 2. I want the background to be white. Okay, let's run that. So now number doubler, provide a number. Okay, so that seems to be working. We got number doubler, we got provide a number. Of course, the next thing to do would be to create an input field. So let me make that a separate item here in our code, and let me just say create input box. Let's call it input box. So the way to do that is to create a variable. I'm going to say int_box, and I'm going to say entry with capital E. We need a couple of parameters. Of course, again, we use window to make clear that we're still working in that window that we created before. And then I'm going to say the width for this entry box shouldn't be too big, you know, just some numbers should be able to be put in there. So I'm going to say width is 6. The background color should be white. And that's enough for now. I want to position this input box the way I positioned everything so far. So I'm going to say imp_box.grid. Now I just copy and paste these elements here, these parameters here. Of course, I changed the row to 3. The rest I can leave the way it is. And then I'm going to have a quick look how that looks. So here we got number doubler, provide a number, and this is an input box, so people can type stuff. We still need a button to submit the entry, but at least the box is there. So as I said, we need a submit button, so I'm going to say create submit button. The way to do that is to create another variable, of course, where I would say s_btn for submit button. Then, no surprises here. The keyword here for the object is button. Again, we need to provide some parameters. Window is the first one, of course. Second one would be the text to appear on the button. So that would be text equals submit. I'm going to set the width to, let's see, we got 6 letters here, so let's say the width is 6. I'm going to try 8 to see what it does, if it adds those 2 extra spaces at the end, or it will center the text so we have a space left and right of this button. I'm going to then, okay, so here comes a tricky bit. What you need to do when you create a button is tell the computer, okay, when this button is clicked, what will happen? So I'm going to say command is, and now I need to provide the name of a function that will be triggered when this button is clicked. So we don't have a function yet, so that's something we're going to do next. I'm just going to provide the name here, where I'm just going to call it trigger. And then up here with functions, on line 4, I'm going to say def trigger. That will be our function, no parameters, a colon. And then for now, I'm just going to say pass. We need this word, or else we're going to get an error, because if we just leave an empty function like this and think to ourselves, oh, we're going to fill in the code later for this function, we will get an error because you cannot have a function without any content. So I could have done just print nothing. That would have worked, but it's more common to use pass. So it's good practice to use pass. So this is an indication to yourself saying, hey, I'm just, I'll fill this in later. Yeah, so command is trigger. That's the name of the function. The only thing we have to do now is put our button on the grid in our window. So we're going to say s_btn.grid like we did before, and then we just copy these parameters. And we're going to say, of course, a row is now 4. Now the way it is, let me see what it looks like. Okay, so we got a title, provide a number. I can provide a number and I can click submit. And there's no error. Also, of course, there's nothing happening because our function is empty. But so far, things are working perfectly. Now it's time for us to do something in our function here. The first thing is we want to retrieve whatever the user typed here. So the trick there is to use the variable for our input box. So that's this guy here, input_box. So I'm going to put that here. But I want to store whatever the user typed in a new variable. So I'm going to say user input is, and then I'm going to use that input box variable, and I will use the method get with parentheses. So user input is input box get. I could just quickly print whatever the user types. So I'm going to say print user input and see what that brings us. So let me run the code again. Provide a number. I'm going to type 34 and submit. And indeed it prints 34, as you can see. So that's working greatly. So the only thing now I need to do, this is our number doubler, is somewhere underneath this button, I want to create a text saying 34 times 2 is 60. Yeah, so I can get rid of the print statement. That was just for checking. Now I can say output is, first I have to convert the user input to an integer. So I'm going to say int user_input. And then I have to double it, so times 2. To do that, of course, we create a new label. So I'm going to copy this code here where we already created a label. And I'm going to create a new, I could have kept this one because of scope, but I'm going to create a new label where I'm going to say out, and just out, window text. So the text will be our output, but since this is an integer, we of course have to convert it back to a string. So I'm going to say stir output. The width can be 30, the background can be anything you'd like. So let me maybe say light blue. I'm not really sure if that works. I'm going to try that out. The row should be the next row, so that should be row 5. And that should be it, really. Let's see what this does. See if we have an error somewhere or it's working. Provide a number, no error so far. So let's say 33, submit, and the doubler says 66. So this is working like a charm. And that's pretty much it. So now we have some input. We have user interactivity. They submit, we have a submit button. You have output. A very simple TKinter application.